because when I started to write my first commercial script,
Yes.
I felt completely free of any influence. Obviously, I had influences from film because I learned what a film was from other filmmakers, as you do. But it wasn't like sort of Brian De Palma being obsessed with Hitchcock and trying to redo Hitchcock, or Tarantino trying to redo every terrible 1970s movies. I felt quite free of influence, whereas when I was trying to write, I was feeling very much the presence of Nabokov, let's say.
Right, yes.
And so it was kind of liberating.
Yeah.
And the last thing I was thinking was that I wanted to adapt novels. And in fact, it was, I really thought, you know, the auteur theory, which sounds like it's the author theory of the French critics, and all of the French filmmakers were French critics first, like Truffaut and Godard. But really, I thought that you had to write your own screenplay and direct it to be a true film author. Well, of course, they weren't really talking about that. They were trying to redeem Hollywood filmmakers like Howard Hawks and John Ford
Yes.
from the industry, and saying these directors, yes, they're part of an industry, but they still have a voice and a vision that's unique, and you can see it from film to film. So they weren't really, and those guys never wrote their own screenplays.
Yes, yes.
So, for me, it was, you got to write your own thing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I did The Dead Zone, based on Stephen King's novel, that I realized that you really didn't have to write your own screenplay. It could be quite liberating and exciting to mix your sensibility with someone else.
Yes.
And produce a work that neither one of you could have produced alone.
Yes.
And that was actually quite exciting.
Yeah.
Very much like producing children. And like children, they often go wrong. You cannot, there's no such thing as translating a novel into a movie. There's no translation possible. There's no dictionary for that. As I've said many times, you really have to betray the novel in order to be faithful to the novel. Because you are creating a new thing, a cinematic thing, that is really a different form.
Absolutely.
So a lot of people, Stephen King said to me that The Dead Zone was the first adaptation of one of his novels that he liked, and he thought was really good. And a lot of the fans of that movie think it's faithful to the novel, but it's really incredibly different.
Yeah.
But what it reproduces is the tone of it somehow, the emotional, the barometric pressure of it, you know, the New Englandness of it. Even though, of course, it was shot in Ontario. It's an illusion, movies. So, and that pleased me, of course.
Yes.
I mean, and I had lovely moments, like with Don DeLillo, meeting him in Portugal, and Estoril, actually. There was a film festival there, and he was there. This is after I had written the screenplay for Cosmopolis, and we had a little discussion, and he said, you know, there's that section in my book where Benno, it's his journal, and Benno is the guy who kills Rob Pattinson at the end. Not in the book, because Rob Pattinson isn't in the book, actually. But he says, in the book, you start to read Benno's journal right from the very beginning, so you know you've got this balance between the guy who's going to be this killer and the guy who's going to be his victim. And he said, I wondered how you were going to handle Benno's journal in your screenplay, and you handled it by leaving it out. I said, yep. And he thought that was a really good idea.
So,
well, you know, seriously, I have 5 producers who I've worked with before who want to make Consumed into a movie. And at first I thought, yes, of course, of course I want to do that, because how many directors get to do that? How many novelists get to do that? And then gradually, I realized that this is the last thing I want to do. Because the book was complete. You know, it was what it was, and I would be bored. I was kind of doing it again, but in a kind of diminished or distilled way. On the other hand, it might be interesting to have some other director destroy my book for tons of money. You would have to betray the book in order to be faithful.
Yes, right.
You really would, and I don't feel like doing it. I'm really happy with it now. Our relationship is good. I don't betray it. I could let, David Fincher or Neil Jordan, they can be trained.
Is it a digital apocalypse?
Oh, it's already come. I mean, film is dead.
Yeah.
Forget about it.
Yeah.
You can't even get film processed in Toronto anymore.
Yeah.
You would have to send your rushes to LA to get it processed, which would take a lot of time and a lot of money. That's over. In fact, the only thing that's analog on a film set is the people. I mean, the sound recording has been digital for 10 or 15 years, and nobody uses tape recorders anymore, and they haven't for a long, long time. The advantages of digital are huge, and it was only a matter of time before that became the case with the film part. And just as I couldn't wait to get rid of typewriters, though I have affection for them, but I hated using them, I couldn't wait for word processing. I felt the same about the film disappearing. The only thing I like about film is the smell, when you open the can, but you could get an air freshener. Kodak 5. And that would make me happy.
Thank you.
Positioned technology as an evil thing, a dehumanizing thing. But for me, it's absolutely us.
Yeah.
We are the only ones who create technology. It's a reflection of all that we are. It's an extension of our nervous system. The obvious thing with the phone and your voice in my ear, and so it reflects the worst and the best of us. The most hideous war machines, yeah, and the most beautiful technological things, and some other things, so it is a reflection of us. Yes. And in the book, I'm not really very judgmental. Some people have said it's cold and clinical. You can tell by what I read that it's not really cold and clinical, but the emotion belongs to the characters. It's not me, the author, imposing my emotional response. I'm not trying to push the reader into any direction or other. And in my movie making, I'm the same way. I mean, Howard Shore, who's composed the music for most of my movies, and we have this understanding. There are some movie scores that are so overbearing, and they're telling you, this is a sad scene, be sad. This is a scary scene, be scary. And we never do that in the movies that I do. Although he does it with Peter Jackson, but that's okay. I want the music to be a kind of another dimension, another, and not really direct you into an emotional response. We figure the audience will have, if the emotion is real and it's there in the characters, in the plot, the audience will see it, they'll react to it. You don't have to force it. Yeah.
You described writing a novel as being the most intimate, comparatively to filmmaking, for instance.
Right.
But you also described yourself as natively insecure.
Right.
Did the confidence behind your filmmaking facilitate the courage to write this novel, or was it your insecurity and wanting to know whether or not you'd be good at it that actually pushed you to become a novelist?
I was actually lying about the insecurity.
It's all confidence.
Let's put it this way, Lee. I'm the least insecure person I know, honestly. Maybe it's because I live with a lot of insecure people around me, I don't know. But no, seriously, you mustn't exaggerate that when I talk about my writing, my insecurity as a writer. Insecure, it sounds, even as I was saying it, I thought, it's not exactly right. Uncertain, more than insecure. And the fact of my filmmaking, well, I have confidence that, that I have created some works that, dramatic works that work, that have played well, so I definitely, I'm sure that helped. But the writing was so different, though, that there are very few directors who can write. And Neil Jordan writes novels, but there are very few because it is an extremely different form. So, and I'm not sure that helped me a lot.